Once a giant, always a giant. For me, it's only a giant.
What's going on YouTube? Diggy546. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you're new. Like the video if you like the video. And I won't tell if you click that bell. Let's go ahead and get into this. So Joe Schoen had his press conference today. And before I talk specifically about Joe Schoen's press conference, I wanted to get into John Mara's post-interview, I guess post-conference interview. John Mara specifically stated, people, the Giants are not going to be trading for Deshaun Watson. And I'm sorry for people who think this is a news flash too, but we should know that given the Giants' history, given how the Giants treat any of these situations, given the Giants cut DeAndre Baker, even though he was found innocent, a ton of things. The Giants do not take chances on people with any type of legal cases. They do not want more people pinning things on them as far as how they handle the Josh Brown situation. They do not want to deal with that. Whether Deshaun Watson is innocent or guilty, he will have a ton of people who will criticize whatever organization that he goes to. And the Giants just finished repairing their image, in the last couple of years after that Josh Brown thing. So they're not going to take that chance. They're also not going to take the chance. And specifically, Mara said this. His cap hit is huge. The Giants have $13,000 in cap space. And if you trade for the guy, you're going to have to give up multiple picks, multiple premium picks. You're not going to be able to build anything around him. Not that he needs a super team around him, but you're not going to be able to build much of anything around him, especially the offensive line. So you're giving up those resources. You're going to have to cut people to get 40-something million dollars in cap space, or maybe you restructure them. So you're going to have to cut people regardless. And then after that, at any point, the ball could drop and Deshaun Watson could be not available to play because of the legal stuff. So it's a huge risk, one risk that the Giants are not in a position to take. We are not in a position to take that risk on Deshaun Watson, and I'm thankful that John Mara finally cleared it up because a lot of people still had that in their head, and that is not a realistic situation. So that came out, not saying that if Deshaun Watson was completely innocent, if he's completely innocent, I wouldn't have any problem with him coming to the Giants. I do think he's one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the league, but there's way too many variables, and I just don't think the Giants would do it. So starting off with Joe Schoen was nervous starting off the press conference. He, looked really nervous. At some points, he looked like, he was emotional. I don't know if the nerves came from him being so emotional about finally getting that job, getting what he described his dream job, and speaking up in front of that New York media for the first time, especially taking questions from people like Pat Leonard and the rest of the goons that ask crazy questions on the Giants beat reporter. So Joe Schoen looked a little bit nervous. A ton of fans in the live chat were like crucifying him for being nervous. And this huge opportunity, this is his first time being a general manager. He looked a little nervous. That doesn't really have any effect on how he'll do his job behind the scenes. So I'm not worried about that at all. We're not hiring a preacher. We're not hiring a motivational speaker. We're not hiring, a public speaker. We're not hiring the president of the United States. We are hiring a general manager, and his money is going to be made when he makes those moves, when he, makes the draft pick, when he signs a free agent, when he scouts. That's where he'll make his money. When he hires this new head coach, that's where he'll make his money, not at the press conference, not behind the podium. So no problems with that. I'm not worried about him at all from him being nervous. Now, the next thing is he said that he wanted to win now, or win in general, while still building the team for the long term. And now that's something that kind of made me kind of pause, because Dave Gettleman said the same thing. He said that he believed that we could win now and build. So that kind of makes me a little bit nervous. Is he going to attack this the way that Gettleman attacked it, as far as viewing this roster as further along than it is? Or is he just saying that because you never really want to put a team out there that you think is going to lose a bunch of games? You never want to say, I'm putting a team out there and I don't expect them to win games. You always should expect to win games. So that could be simply why he's saying it. He also did say that he has to evaluate the roster. He's going to, when he hires the coach, him, the coach, everybody else, they're going to sit and they're going to look at the tape. They're going to talk about what players they think need to stay, what players they think need to go. All of that stuff, they're going to sit down and look at the tape. Also, including the scouting, everybody is going to sit down and look at the tape, and they'll make their decisions from there. So that kind of makes me think that I don't think he's that dense to believe that the Giants roster is some playoff roster and all they need is to add a star safety or a star linebacker or a star running back. I don't think he's that dense. I do think he'll dress that offensive line as early and as often as he should. So that's one thing that kind of made me concerned, but I think that's just something that you should say as a general manager. You never want to say that we're going to go out there and lose. Now, he did say he didn't have any expectations for the playoffs. He just wants to show that the team is improving. So I agree with that. The next thing, he said he wanted to build an offense around DJ and build an offense that accentuates DJ's strengths. I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that because I have been someone who's jumped off the DJ bandwagon. I was a huge DJ supporter. He huge, like one of the only content creators that really stayed on there until about week 4 of this past year. Now, I do believe that Daniel Jones has some of the tools that could make him a really great quarterback, but he also has a lot of shortcomings, and that starts with the processing, especially in short areas in the red zone, and it also starts with his ability to extend plays, which I think are the two things right now that I'm seeing in the league that makes quarterbacks elite, and he doesn't really excel at either one of them. So it makes me a little bit nervous that he says he's going to build around DJ, and it makes me kind of think about that past quote where he says, we can win and build for the long term. So if he views that a quarterback is a slam dunk quarterback, I think he should take one. I think he should take one. That's just all I'm saying. Now, is there a chance that he can revive DJ's career? Yes, but I don't want that to be his sole purpose, to make Daniel Jones look good and not get the best possible quarterback in here. But it looks like Daniel Jones is going to be safe for this season, which I sort of agree with. I think Bryce Young, CJ Stroud are guys we should target next year if Daniel Jones doesn't have a serious turnaround, but kind of puts us back in that excitement phase because it seems like they're actually going to try to get the most out of Daniel Jones. So maybe this year we can actually see what Daniel Jones looks like in an ideal situation for Daniel Jones, especially if we get a guy like Brian Dable who excels at building offenses, and he builds offenses around people. He doesn't really have a West Coast or a run and shoot. He doesn't have a specific type of offense, Air Coryell, none of that. He builds his offenses specifically around the players that he has, and we'll see if he can do that with Daniel Jones. Now, another thing that Joe Schoen did was he spoke on analytics. He talked about data innovation as a tool. Analytics are going to be using as a tool here, not as, the end-all be-all. He did say that he's going to use every single tool that he had to give this team a competitive advantage, which I agree with. Dave Gettleman did not seem to be too far into analytics, and I think we were missing out on a competitive advantage there. He also talked about analytics as far as the players, their health, as far as monitoring how much they run around, everything like that, analytics with the coaching, analytics in every aspect. So he's not going to be driven by analytics, but he will consider what the numbers are saying in certain situations, which makes sense. When he talked about how he'll hire as head coach, he's not really concerned about somebody who was already a head coach, which we already knew because of the guys he's been interviewing. He did say he just wants the best man for the job. He said he had a great relationship with Brian Dable, of course. He has a great relationship with Dan Quinn. He said he knows Dan Quinn. So I'm thinking it's going to be between those guys. I'm someone who's kind of still thinking about Leslie Frazier. He's been at a very elite level as a defensive coordinator for a long time, and he is worth a strong look. But it looks like it's going to be between Dan Quinn, Brian Flores, and Brian Dable, with Brian Dable being the favorite right now. But he said the number one thing is being aligned with that head coach that he chooses for building the team. And, he wants complete alignment in the entire organization. Now, he did say that John Mara, Steve Tisch, and Chris Mara were going to be involved in that head coaching process as far as finding one, and it's going to be a collaborative process. Now, I'm still thinking that it's going to be mostly Joe Schoen because his first quote, he said he had to go out there and find a head coach. The John Mara talked about finding a GM so he could find a head coach. So I believe that this final decision, of course, the final decision is going to be with the Mara family and the Tisch family, but I think the actual decision as far as like who he's going to bring there is going to be Joe Schoen. So he's got an interview with, I think he finished. I think he had an interview with Brian Dable yesterday. He has another interview with Leslie Frazier today, and that'll be his second interview with Leslie Frazier. So let's look at the next thing that popped up here. He said that uh, also to build on that, he said that John Mara and Chris Mara and Steve Tisch have given him the resources to do what he needs to do, which means it seems like they've given him autonomy. That quote that came out, carte blanche, they've given him a complete blank slate for doing what he needs to do to flip this roster around. So a lot of insightful quotes right here. It wasn't a short press conference, but it kind of ended abruptly. But I have a couple more things right here. He said he's going to meet with Kevin Abrams as far as the cap space. Now, Kevin Abrams has been with the Giants forever. He's been here for a long time. He's been the assistant GM for a long time. And I'm not really a fan of just getting rid of him just to get rid of him, because he's been one of the best cap guys ever. And I know a lot of people say, but the Giants have $13,000 in cap space. But guess what? Kevin Abrams cannot go out there and sign people. He's not the person signing people. He's the guy that makes these contracts work. He's the guy that makes sure that he can keep these contracts so they actually fit under the salary cap. And the things that I've seen him do over the years, as far as how he's negotiated the numbers, I think Kevin Abrams is one of the premier cap guys in the league. That's my opinion. Now, do I want him making player decisions? No. But I think as far as the cap goes, I think Kevin Abrams is one of the best guys in the league. Now, he did say that some difficult decisions will have to be made, meaning almost 100%. Some of these starters that we may like a little bit, that may have had some good seasons, are going to probably be gone next year. The first thing I look at is Saquon Barkley there. Nate Solder's probably a guy that's going to go. Not that I think he would have stayed either way. He's probably saying you might not be able to re-sign Evan Ingram, who I think should be given a chance at a better offense, but he's probably gone either way. He's also also some other people you can look at. Sterling Shepard, James Bradbury, Blake Martinez, Leonard Williams, you can't really move. But there's some veterans on this team. There's some guys that are making some money on this team that may not be here just because of this cap situation. He pretty much made it very clear that he's going to have to do something and get very creative to get out of this cap situation, because we have $13,000 in cap space. We're going to need about $8 million to sign our draft class. So we have got to figure out a way to figure this out. Another thing, he said he wants to build a team with guys that have the right habits. And I heard him say that a couple of times. And it seems like he's a guy that's actually studying behavior instead of just, studying all the things that don't really matter. So as far as rookies, as far as free agents, he's seeing what they do that make them a good teammate, what they do that make them a good player. So that was just something I picked out of that. And as far as how caught up he is with the draft, he said he's pretty much 4 rounds deep in what he considers in the draft as far as prospects go. So he's right on schedule with the draft, right there where everyone else is. And as far as free agency, he says he's going to have to do some catching up, which is understandable because he's looking at it from an entirely new perspective. We don't have much money either way, but he's got to catch up on free agency. Now, with the final part that some people might not like, I'm really I don't know. I haven't been in the building. But the last part he says is he doesn't blame the lack of success as far as the draft, as far as free agency, on the scouts. And that kind of makes sense. And his justification for that was sometimes it's the process that you have the scouts running through. Sometimes it's the person that's controlling the scouts, because at the end of the day, Dave Gettleman has to make the pick. Dave Gettleman was making the picks, or Joe Judge or one of those guys with a lot of power were making those picks. It's not the scouts that are making the picks. So he said he has to look at these scouts, make sure that they're aligned, make sure that they're buying into his process, but he's not going to just fire everybody without evaluating who's who in the building. Now, does this mean that we're going to lose a bunch of scouts? I don't know. Does this mean that we're going to keep a bunch of scouts? I don't know. But he's at least going to give every single scout in that building an opportunity to keep their job and an opportunity to show if they're a good scout or not. So I thought that was pretty interesting. It made sense to me, but a lot of people might not like the fact that he's not going to just fire everybody. But that's as far as Joe Schoen's intro press conference went. Not much else that he covered besides that. You guys let me know what you thought of it. I think it's a pretty solid start. Obviously, we weren't going to get a bunch of information But you guys let me know what you took away from it down in the comments. You made it this deep into the video. Come on, just hit the subscribe button. I make Giants content primarily, draft content secondarily, and during the season, I'm going to be doing a lot of reacting to pretty much most of the NFL games and everything NFL. So if you made it this deep, go ahead and join the D6 squad.